Good morning, bonjour, excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tosin Panum Panu. I'm the thematic ambassador for CVF for renewable energy. And I also happen to be this year serving as the UNFCCC SUFSA chair. I'm extremely honored to moderate the opening ceremony. Warm greetings from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where I'm joining you from, and welcome to the CVF Africa and Middle East Regional Dialogue 2021. The government of Bangladesh as CVF chair and the government of Ethiopia as a Troika member have been co-chairs of the CVF Africa and Middle East Regional Dialogue. Two countries which are among the most vulnerable to climate change and that have been at the forefront of climate action with their tireless efforts to push the agenda forward. The Climate Vulnerable Forum Africa and Middle East Regional Dialogue is the second in a series of CVF regional dialogues being convened by the forum to identify an up-to-date understanding of the types of challenges, successes, needs, and gaps that the region's most vulnerable developing nations face as they work to implement climate change policies and tackle the growing global challenge of the climate crisis amid the response and recovery to the COVID-19 pandemic. The dialogue has provided an opportunity for CVF member and observer countries in the region to exchange experiences in climate change policy and develop collective priorities. Its outcomes will feed into the global deliberations of the CVF ahead of critical multilateral global policy events in 2021, such as UNFCCC COP26, and contribute to the development of global momentum for the shared agenda of climate-threatened nations throughout 2021. On the 27th and 28th, the meeting of experts started the process of finalizing a CVF regional communique outlining regional perspectives on climate action, as well as discussions on the CVF UNFCCC COP26 policy priorities on loss and damage, the 1.5 degrees ambition, finance and adaptation, carbon markets, and partnership for climate prosperity to build momentum and awareness around the CVF's agenda in the region and beyond, and share agreements on future climate change policy priorities. We also heard from key partners and collaborators of the CVF, as well as initial consultations on CVF communications initiatives, such as the CVF membership process as the platform of the regional dialogue reaches beyond the region's existing member countries, involving regional observer countries that are interested to learn more about the work of the forum or potentially to petition for forum membership in 2021. The UNITAR's training learning session on climate change diplomacy was a success, where participants went through the UNFCCC climate change negotiation process through the Paris Agreement and the NDCs, as well as challenges and opportunities on the road to COP26 and focus on transparency and Article 6. In this regard, today's ministerial segment includes opening remarks, followed by a video prepared by the CVS Secretariat and a keynote statement from Vanessa Nakate, youth activist. After that, we will have the reporting session presented by Mr. Messour Desi and the ministerial roundtable moderated by the Honorable Professor Fekadu Beyene, Commissioner of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of Ethiopia, and then a closing segment by the Honorable Abdul Kalam Azad, Special Envoy of the Climate Vulnerable Forum Presidency of Bangladesh. With this, I have the honor to invite to the floor to give the floor to aka Abdul Momen, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, People's Republic of Bangladesh. Honorable Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you.
You are muted. You are muted.
Adaptation. Bismillah Rahman Rahim. His Excellency Mr. Tosi Mpanu, CVF Thematic Ambassador for Renewable Energy and Chair UNFCCC Subsidiary Body for Scientific and Technical Advice, Professor Patrick Bargosian, CEO of Global Center on Adaptation, Ms. Janet Rogan, Regional Ambassador for the Middle East and Africa, COP 2016, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. It gives me immense pleasure addressing you all, although virtually, in this CVF regional dialogue for Africa and the Middle East to highlight priorities of this region in tackling climate change. This is the second in a series of regional policy activities conveyed by the forum in 2021, co-hosted by Ethiopia as CVF Troika member in the lead up to COP26 in November in Glasgow. Excellencies, the dual jeopardy of climate change and COVID pandemic have been taking toll on all nations, even more for the climate vulnerable states. This has made us appreciate more the value of effective cooperation and collaboration as stipulated in SDG 17 for realizing the aspirations of global peace and prosperity in a sustainable manner. Ladies and gentlemen, the number and frequency of natural disasters in Africa and in the Middle East region have also been on the rise recently. Prime threats of climate change and human-induced disaster have made the consequences more devastating in many countries of the region. Natural hazards like water scarcity, sand and dust storms, droughts, deforestation, extinction of wildlife and fauna are just to name a few. Dear colleagues, Bangladesh is the chair of CVF, is continuously striving to advocate and craft better measures and gain access to resources for the forum members. We are promoting the interest of the CVF globally. In that spirit, we recently hosted the first Climate Vulnerable Finance Summit and the 7th V20 Ministerial Dialogue Roundtable under the visionary leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Bangladesh is pursuing key initiatives like forming a new parliamentary forum of the CVF, launching the CVF and the V20 Joint Multi-Donor Fund, and so on. We are further strengthening our commitment to global goals at the national front to implementing the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan to achieve low carbon economic growth for optimized prosperity and partnership. Our Vision 2100 is a long-term development plan in a sustainable manner, balancing the development needs and the nature. Excellencies, let me conclude with the following thoughts today. First, let us work together in ensuring that the developed countries fulfill their obligation of $100 billion annual financing, comprising equal fund for mitigation and adaptation. We also need to work unitedly to ensure that emitting countries do the needful to contain the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees centigrade. Without arresting the temperature rise, we cannot stop the sea level rise. We cannot save this planet Earth. Second, we have to pursue for transfer of green and climate finance technology to developing and vulnerable countries through North-South, South-South, and triangular cooperation. Third, accelerate developing and sharing production and distribution of renewable energy at cost affordable by the CVF countries to ensure that we can leave a habitable planet for the next generation. I thank you all. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu.
Thank you very much to His Excellency Abdul Momen, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, and thank you for those very inspiring remarks. And indeed, Bangladesh is an example to developing countries when it comes to combating climate change. And I underscore the three messages you left us with: the need to work together, the need for more cooperation and triangular exchanges, and the importance of deployment of renewable energy. Thank you very much, Excellency. I will now pass the floor to Professor Anthony Nyong, Director for Africa Global Center on Adaptation, a CVF Managing Partner. Professor Nyong, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Your Excellencies, Pekadu Beyene and Eke Abdul Momen, Honorable Co-Chairs, the CVF Thematic Ambassador for Renewable Energy and UNFCCC, Substar Chair, Tosito Simpanu, my very good friend and the chair of this session. Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished participants and guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with you today representing the Global Center on Adaptation, the only global institution established to solely address issues of climate change adaptation. Climate change impacts and the unequal burden that they place on the most vulnerable countries must be properly responded to. Global attention must be continuously drawn to the vulnerabilities of the countries that have contributed the least to the problem, but bear a very large proportion of its adverse impacts. For this, vulnerable countries have to jointly voice their needs and work toward finding solutions and ensure that the required global support is achieved. Without the global political will and support, we can't do much. We saw what happened in the times of coronavirus when the world came together and marshaled out resources. We need to see that happen in the space of climate change adaptation. The Climate Vulnerable Forum is a crucial initiative to make this happen. The CVF has shown its ability to influence the global agenda and also enhance cooperation on adaptation. The Global Center on Adaptation, as solutions broker to accelerate adaptation, is committed to supporting vulnerable countries in their efforts. Therefore, we feel privileged to be the managing partner of the CVF. We host the CVF Secretariat and are supporting the CVF to achieve its mandate and goals. Since October 2019, the Global Center on Adaptation has supported the CVF member states in hosting and organizing events, communication efforts, research and analytics, as well as in partnership development. We enabled the creation of the CVF and V20 Joint Multi-Donor Fund, which is crucial in receiving the financial resources to realize CVF's ambitions. We continuously provide strong support to CVF initiatives. Our board members speak at CVF events and carry the outcome messages to their constituencies where the support is largely needed. Our co-chair, the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, for instance, joined the very successful launch of the Midnight Survival Deadline for the Climate Initiative. And we ensure that the 48 CVF member states benefit optimally from everything that the GCA does. Our State and Trends in Adaptation report and online knowledge exchange provide member states with the knowledge and data on adaptation needs, solutions, and opportunities to guide effective and equitable adaptation actions. Our partnership with the Least Developed Countries Universities Consortium on Climate Change supports capacity building to create and use knowledge for action. We are working to expand this network to many member states in and outside of Africa, using it as a key vehicle for South-South and even North-South learning and knowledge exchange. Through the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, launched in January this year in partnership with the African Development Bank, the Global Center on Adaptation aims to support the 17 African CVF member states to implement the solutions needed to accelerate adaptation. Overall, this program will mobilize $25 billion for adaptation alone by 2025, and many of the CVF countries stand to benefit from this. In implementing the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, we hope to continue to expand our support by ensuring that CVF member states in Africa, the Middle East, and beyond increasingly benefit from our REACH programs. We will continue to amplify the voices of the CVF member states to achieve equitable and timely adaptation action. At the same time, we will continue to support and enable the CVF to be leaders in adaptation, setting the examples that others will follow. I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Well, thank you to you, Professor Young, for this insightful presentation. And thank you for sharing the work of the Global Center for Adaptation. We do need adaptation-focused program in Africa, and the African Adaptation Accelerated Program is quite exemplary. The forum engaged in various advocacy activities as part of its advocacy work, including the Midnight for Survival initiative, which was launched on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, presided over by Sheikh Hasina, Prime Minister of Bangladesh. The main demand of this initiative was for countries to submit an updated NDC by December 31st, 2020, which was a deadline. I'm going to show you a quick video of this initiative now.
These commitments, whether for 2030 or 2050, are not aimless targets. They are life or death deadlines.
Midnight on the 31st of December 2020 is our survival deadline.
We call upon all parties to fulfill their commitments under it and to submit enhanced NDCs by the end of 2020.
The climate crisis is indeed an existential threat. Every nation must treat it as such.
We now need to redouble our efforts before we pass the point of no return.
Global greenhouse gas emissions have continued to rise and are now 43% higher than they were in 2000.
We must limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees and transition to climate resilient economies.
Let's aim for high ambition, zero carbon, go back to 1.5 degrees and save the planet.
We have to take the leadership
of making prevention of climate change effects the most important public policy that we can undertake.
The time to take action to save the planet is not tomorrow, but today.
2020 is a year for action.
Thank you for your kind attention. This video, which was very inspiring, hopefully will encourage other countries who have not done so to also send their revised NDCs so that we can all be in line with the 1.5 degrees objective of the Paris Agreement. I would now like to introduce our keynote speaker, Vanessa Nakate, a Ugandan climate activist. She was the first Fridays for Future climate activist in Uganda and founder of the Rise Up Climate movement, which aims to amplify the voices of activists from Africa. Her work includes raising awareness to the danger of climate change, the causes and the impacts. Vanessa, you have the floor.
Greetings to you all. My name is Vanessa Nakate. I am a climate justice activist from Kampala, Uganda, a country that has one of the fastest changing climates in the world. I am also the founder of the Rise Up movement. I am happy to be speaking with all of you today. I was 21 years old when I got to learn about the impacts of the climate crisis in my country. It was at this moment that I realized that the climate crisis was the greatest threat facing our lives right now. This was evident because of the extreme weather events in Uganda. As the global temperatures rise, weather patterns change, causing shorter and heavier rainy seasons and longer and hotter dry spells. The climate crisis is our reality. It is our nightmare. Our livelihoods are being destroyed right now. I studied more and more about how the climate crisis was already destroying vast parts of the African continent. Historically, the entire continent of Africa is responsible for only 3% of global emissions, and yet Africans are already suffering some of the most brutal impacts fueled by the climate crisis. Rapidly intensifying hurricanes, devastating floods, and withering droughts. This is not just about the weather. This is not about statistics. This is about people. Many Africans have lost their lives, while countless more have lost their homes, farms, and businesses. This is a disaster. This is a crisis. This is a climate emergency. So what is the main response from the developed countries for all the social and economic crises fueled by the burning of fossil fuels? Greater and greater investment in the exploration of fossil fuels. I have one thing to say to countries and banks who continue to fund the digging up and burning of fossil fuels in Africa. We cannot eat coal and we cannot drink oil. And while we are at it, we need leaders to stop calling natural gas green or sustainable. Like all of the other fossil fuels, gas is killing us. So we need to keep coal, oil, and so-called natural gas in the ground. What is the greatest challenge to getting this done? It is not alternative energy. We have that in abundance. It's called the wind and the sun and the waves. No, the biggest challenge we face is corporate greed. Companies, banks, and investors can make quick short-term profits off of fossil fuels, even though they are killing us and destroying our planet. And yet, we have no planet B. So I say this to the leaders: stop investing in fossil fuels, stop digging up and burning of fossil fuels, rise up for the people and the planet. We cannot eat coal and we cannot drink oil. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, for this very powerful message. It is critical to include youth in this discussion because we're talking about the future. We will have now the reporting session presented by Mr. Mensur Desi. Mr. Mensur, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Tosi, for giving me the chance to present the report. Esteemed colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. It's my pleasure to join you virtually today. My name is Mensur Desi. I'm a director for Multilateral Environmental Agreements Negotiation Coordination Directorate at Environment, Forest, and Climate Change Commission of Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. I'm joining you live from Addis Ababa today because I was being with Ms. Ambassador Tosi in the last couple of days in London to attend the July ministerial meeting, which is very, very important, and also convey many of the messages that are relevant with the reports that I will present. The Climate Vulnerable Forum, Africa and Middle East Regional Dialogue 2021 is the second in a series of CVF regional dialogues being conveyed by the forum to identify the up-to-date understanding of the types of challenges, success, needs, and gaps that the region's most vulnerable developing nations face as they work to implement climate change policies and tackle the growing global challenge of the climate crisis amid the response of the and recovery of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yesterday, the meeting of experts started the process of finalizing the CVF regional communique outlining regional perspectives on climate action, actually following the half-day training on climate diplomacy. The dialogue highlighted the devastating impact that the climate change has historically caused in Africa and the Middle East, causing significant damage to vulnerable populations, impacting their populations and also their economy. The meeting highlighted how climate action is mutually beneficial to different economies and explored areas of convergence between the respective groups. Among the areas of convergence identified were the following. The first and most important element of convergence is that the delivery of the $100 billion per annum target. Provision of the annual commitment of developed country parties to mobilize $100 billion per annum by 2020. Climate finance annually to developing countries is crucial and critical to enabling action and sustaining especially trust in international cooperation. The second one is actually a very important issue for the CVF and the V20 is that greater ambition from major emitters, which was actually the major and central point for discussions during the ministerial meeting too, July ministerial meeting too. The social, environmental, and economic security of the Africa and the Middle East requires safeguarding of the 1.5 degrees Celsius Paris Agreement goal to limiting the warming. Even 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming poses catastrophic risks for the region. The third point is that imperative of new financing. According to the Global Commission on Adaptation, that's the GCA, financing needs for adaptation and resilience are 1.7 trillion US dollar per annum. At least developed countries, small islands, and also vulnerable Middle East, this is actually very critical. We moreover look forward to the full substantiation and also operationalization of the Paris Agreement Global Goal on Adaptation, GGA, as a top priority for our most vulnerable nations struggling on the front line of the fast worsening worldwide climate crisis. The other and actually most important issue for the Africa and also Middle East is that loss and damage. In addition to the need for financing of loss and damage, COP26 needs to place a higher level of prioritization on loss and damage and the work of the Warsaw International Mechanism. This is actually repeatedly and also very critically highlighted during the last July ministerial meeting, which was hosted by the COP26 incoming COP26 presidency. At COP26, we need to finalize robust carbon markets consistent with the 1.5 degree to unlock new finance streams, while the carbon markets regime should raise at least 5% share of proceeds to support the adaptation actions of developing countries, particularly vulnerable climate change. Africa Adaptation Acceleration Initiative is one of the other elements of our communique that was already agreed by the experts. We called for donors and international and regional collaboration to prioritize efforts to deliver on the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Initiative, which aims to implement the vision of the African Union's Africa Adaptation Initiative by scaling up and accelerating climate adaptation in Africa. Supporting climate adaptation is a core component of the Paris Agreement, and we call on the international community to redeem all pledged commitments. Work protection and also jobs is the other element of our communique. We call upon partners to consider the need for urgent capacity, finance, technology, and technical assistance in general means of implementation to help protect workers in the Africa and also Middle East region to expose Middle region exposed to the disastrous effects of climate change, disastrous effects due to actually climate change. The other issue is displacement and migration. This is actually directly linked with the impacts of climate change. We call upon increased support to Africa and the Middle East regions to help most vulnerable communities to increase their resilience to disasters and also slow onset due to the climate change. The other element for the Africa and the Middle East is the human rights. We support the call of the CVF for the dedicated new UN special procedure on human rights and climate change amidst the planetary emergency that is already and increasingly threatening and undermining the rights of all our people. The other issue is the parliaments. We encourage the active engagement of parliamentarians of Africa and the Middle East in the CVF parliamentary forum to benefit from the exchange of legislative good practices for exchange of the good practices, legislative good practices for effective national and locally led efforts on climate change. We urge also the IUCN World Conservation Congress at Marseille, France on 3 to 11 September 21 to establish a new commission with the working title of the Climate Resilience Commission per motion 003 before the Congress. Emphasizing the importance of the mobilizing resources and investment assigned to specific to adaptation and loss and damage and of securing robust economic development, as well as safeguarding swift regional progress towards fulfillment of the 2030 SDGs, we welcome the new program of climate prosperity plans launched by the Bangladesh CVF presidency. In this regard, today's ministerial segment with Ethiopia and Bangladesh as co-hosts, we welcome the outcome of CVF Africa and Middle East regional dialogue and the regional communique. I thank you. Back to you, Tosi.
Thank you very much, Mansour. Thank you for this comprehensive and insightful briefing on your deliberations yesterday. It seems like those were very fruitful and those are very, very ambitious as the elements contained in this communique. It was indeed a pleasure to see you in London, Mansour, but it was also a pleasure to see His Excellency Mr. Fekadu Biene, who was also in London, the Commissioner for Ethiopia Environment, Forest and Climate Change Commission. And I would now like to pass on the baton to His Excellency, as he will be the one taking over from here. Thank you. Over to you, Excellency Fekadu Biene.
Thank you very much, Tosi. Honorable Co-Chair, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, distinguished participants, and the guests. Good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the Ministerial Roundtable of the CVF Africa and Middle East Regional Dialogue 2021. I am Fekadu Biene, Commissioner for Environment, Forest and Climate Change Commission of Ethiopia, and I'm joining you live from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It's an honor for me to moderate this session. I would like to begin this segment by extending my warmest welcome and greetings to each and every one of the distinguished representatives of the member countries of the CVF V20, to the honorable members of the observer countries, and to the distinguished representatives of the partner organizations of the CVF V20 participating in this dialogue, co-organized by the Honorable People's Republic of Bangladesh in its capacity as chair of the CVF P20, together with Ethiopia as a Troika member. The CVF Africa and the Middle East Regional Dialogue has aimed to identify and promote headline climate change policy priorities for vulnerable developing countries of the region. It has also amplified inputs of African and Middle East countries to ongoing policy development in this domain, and has drawn on country experience to identify and update understanding of the types of challenges, successes, needs, and the gaps that the region's most vulnerable developing nations face as they work to implement climate change policies and tackle the growing global challenge of the climate crisis amid the response and recovery to the COVID-19 pandemic. We have an absolutely powerful set of voices on topics of pivotal importance for the world today. So let us proceed with our program today. We'll first hear from the honorable ministers of the country members of the CVF, and then we'll proceed with the statements from the honorable ministers of the other observer countries, and afterwards we'll have the statements from the CVF partners. I feel privileged to pass the floor to the Honorable Vainala Paumeavoste Raharidinana, Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development of Madagascar. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Excusez, Madame le modérateur. Nous allons, pardon, vous m'entendez s'il vous plaît?
Oui, on vous entend.
Oui, on vous entend.
En fait, nous faisons partie de la délégation de Madagascar et nous venons de recevoir un message de la part de Madame la ministre. Elle est un peu retenue maintenant et si vous pouviez... pardon, elle va intervenir, je m'excuse. Elle va intervenir maintenant.
Elle est en train de se connecter.
Elle est en train de se connecter.
Allô? Oui.
Madame la ministre va se connecter, elle va nous rejoindre. Elle est en train de se connecter.
Excuse me, shall we wait still or move to the second speaker?
Elle est déjà connectée, Madame la ministre. Elle vient de se connecter, Madame la ministre, à vous la parole.
Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of Bangladesh and President of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, Mr. Commissioner for Environment, Forest and Climate Change of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, distinguished ministers of environment, ladies and gentlemen, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, we join previous speakers in expressing our thanks to the government of Bangladesh, which shares this platform of countries vulnerable to climate change for organizing this event of regional importance on climate. We also extend our thanks to the Secretariat of the Climate Vulnerable Forum and to all those who have directly or indirectly contributed to the success of this video conference. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, allow me to bring the voice of the highly vulnerable population living under the pressure of climate phenomena at the country level. The great south of Madagascar is currently in distress in the face of drought, locust escape, and any other climate-related disasters and risks, and launches an urgent appeal for help to technical and financial partners to act and bring immediate but sustainable climate solutions. Madagascar is a country with high carbon sink potential thanks to its rich flora with the 2 corridors in the east of the country and the tropical and mangrove forests in the coastal areas, but given its socio-economic development, it is considered very vulnerable to the negative effects of global warming. Due to its geographical position in the Indian Ocean basin, Madagascar is exposed to extreme weather phenomena, and their manifestations are as follows: increased frequency and intensification of tropical cyclones, the disruption of the rainy season and the decrease in its quantity, temperature rise. In addition, the phenomenon of El Nino and the passage of the tropic of Capricorn also amplify the level of climate hazard in the region of southern Madagascar. These phenomena, which make the sectors of activity basis of the country's economy, such as agriculture, water resources, and infrastructures, vulnerable to the impacts of the climate change, in particular, the disruption of the agricultural calendar, significant drop in agricultural production, reduced availability and quality of water, degradation of soil quality, loss of beaches and coastal areas, and destruction of infrastructure. For this, Madagascar has put in place framework and strategic documents, including the Madagascar Emergency Plan and the National Policy to Combat Climate Change. Among other things, the objectives are to reduce the vulnerability of the population, promote a resilient economy to the effects of climate change, and promote low carbon development that causes climate change. Currently, the ministry is in the process of updating the various framework and strategic documents related to measures to combat climate change, in particular, the national determined contributions and the national policy to combat climate change, so that they can reflect the real needs of the country and present a solution to achieve them. In addition, the vision of the ministry in charge of environment is to transform the red island into a green island through the massive reforestation campaign and the conservation of existing forests. For the government, efforts are focused on the region most affected and considered highly vulnerable to climate change. This includes, among other things, the installation of hydraulic equipment and infrastructure, the promotion of climate-smart agriculture. As for the means of implementation, apart from international owned resources, Madagascar relies mainly on the financial mechanism of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. These funds are intended to support national initiatives in terms of the fight against climate change. However, access to this fund is complex due to the multiple investment criteria, which are considered burdensome with the time frame of a very long project and the program cycle. In this context, we call for the facilitation and streamlining of the procedure, as well as the acceleration of access for vulnerable countries to climate funds, especially the Green Climate Fund. Ladies and gentlemen, in light of the implementation of the Paris Agreement, we hope that the commitment of 100 billion US dollars per year from developed countries will be effective as of this year, so that developing countries can take action to combat change. In this sense, the COP26 will be the first conference of the parties to implement this agreement, and we support the position of the Madagascar membership group in calling for clarity of donor countries' financial commitments. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much for the very inspiring remarks, Excellency. I would now like to pass the floor to His Excellency Dr. Jane Jane de Arc. Mujawamariya, Honorable Minister of Environment of Rwanda.
Thank you very much, Chair. Excellencies, Minister of Foreign Affairs, People's Republic of Bangladesh, Abdul Mohamed, representative of Global Center on Adaptation and the CVF Managing Partner, Professor Anthony Onyango, regional, my brother, Commissioner for Environment, Forest and Climate Change in Ethiopia, Professor Fekadu Beene, fellow ministers, excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Greetings from Kigali, Rwanda. It's a pleasure to join you today for this important virtual meeting. And I would like to express my appreciation to the People's Republic of Bangladesh for convening this important CVF Africa and Middle East regional dialogue and the progress made during their chairmanship. Rwanda, as founding member of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, believes that this dialogue provides an opportunity for CVF member and observer countries in the region to exchange on challenges, successes, and experiences in climate change policy and develop collective policy priorities. Rwanda is highly vulnerable to seasonal variability and long-term climate change impacts. In addition, increasing vulnerability is expected to result in cumulative impacts across the country's social, economic, and environmental structures. Heavy rainfall and floods in particular are likely to have significant consequences on the environment, society, food security situation, and wider economy. Significant impacts are also expected for the country's water resources, agriculture, and health sectors. Increased temperatures, flooding, increased aridity, and soil erosion put both urban and rural communities at risk, particularly for poor and vulnerable groups. Environmental degradation impacted water resources, and loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services constitute serious obstacles to the country's continued development and responsible management of its natural resources, which is also likely to impact the country's tourism sector. Fellow ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in 2009, a study assessing the economics of climate change in Rwanda estimated a conservative yearly GDP loss of 1% by the year 2030, excluding the effects of floods and other extreme weather events. This led to an understanding that climate change was not only an environmental concern, but also a threat to national development. As a result, a green growth and climate resilience strategy was adopted with the goal of Rwanda becoming a developed, low carbon economy by 2050. The Green Growth and Climate Resilience Strategy identified 5 enabling pillars for implementation, including finance, which led to the establishment of the National Fund for Environment, FONERWA, in 2012 as a financing vehicle to achieve Rwanda's green growth and environmental protection goals. To date, the fund has mobilized $216 million in international environment and climate finance, and the fund created 158,900 green jobs. In the bid of catalyzing climate actions and generating momentum for COP26, Rwanda submitted its updated national determined contribution to the UNFCCC in May 2020 and committed to reduce 38% emissions reduction by 2030. Indeed, through the NDC, Rwanda's adaptation contribution prioritizes adaptation interventions, establish baselines, and develops sector-level performance indicators and targets. This meeting came in the right time when we just concluded London ministerial meeting and preparing for COP26. The London ministerial meeting left me with two lessons. One is that honest discussion can help us to unlock pending issues. And second is that we need to stay together and raise our voice on key issues of our importance and vulnerable countries, including the delivery plan of the annual $100 billion, keeping 1.5 degrees Celsius alive, adaptation and loss and damage. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, fellow ministers, allow me to reaffirm Rwanda's commitment to CVF activities, especially the importance of undertaking climate prosperity plan. And I take this opportunity to thank CVF Secretariat and our technical experts for the work done since the beginning of this meeting on Tuesday in the prepared draft communique. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Dr. Jane de Arc Mujamawarial, for your excellent remarks. Next, I would like to introduce the next speaker, Honorable His Excellency Dr. Kwaku Afriye, Honorable Minister of Environment, Science and Technology and Innovation of Ghana.
Excellencies, the President of the Climate Vulnerable Forum and the Global Center on Adaptation, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, bonjour. On behalf of the government and peoples of Ghana, I'm pleased to address the ministerial segment of the CVC Africa and the Middle East Regional Dialogue 2021. It is slated for 27th to 29th of July 2021. Mr. President, Ghana wishes to thank the government of Bangladesh as current presidency of CVF/V20 and Ethiopia for hosting the African and Middle East Regional Dialogue 2021 in the face of COVID-19 pandemic. On the presidency of CVF, I would also like to inform you on Ghana's intention of expressing interest in hosting the presidency of the Climate Vulnerable Forum after successful tenure of Bangladesh. This is also in line with the UN system of regional rotation. That is the turn of an African nation to host the COP27 Climate Summit. Egypt has already expressed its interest for COP27. Ghana would like to go for the CVF presidency. Mr. President, the regional dialogue is an important big step and another golden opportunity for us to secure livable globe to promote climate change, vulnerable policy priorities for effective adaptation in Africa and the Middle East, and to ensure climate resilience and economic prosperity in our region. This duty is not only a moral one, but a privileged duty we owe to the future generation and cannot afford to fail by not acting decisively here and now. Ladies and gentlemen, Ghana reiterates its position that the Africa and Middle East Ministerial Dialogue process is capable of ensuring that developed countries deliver the $100 billion pledges that will truly help developing countries to pursue sustainable development agenda and to keep us track to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature goal, which is also being championed by the CVF/V20. Mr. President, we call for equal balance treatment of the real issues that threaten the foundation of our economies and the social well-being of our people. Issues like finance, adaptation, loss and damage, and above all, gender and youth are at the very core of what we call for this national dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, Ghana, like many developing nations, is already taking steps to address the negative impacts of climate change. In view of the indispensable risk climate change poses to realization of long-term development objectives, our country has decided to tackle it head-on by developing an ambitious multi-sectorial plan that will allow us to achieve our national goals towards contributing to the updated Ghana NDCs of the Paris Agreement. For effective adaptation, climate resilience, and economic prosperity, and in doing so, together we can explore common grounds and above all seek to build mutual trust as equal partners with unequal capabilities. I wish you all a fruitful discussions and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Dr. Kwaku Afriye, for your excellent remarks. It's my honor to pass the floor now to His Excellency, Mr. Jamil Mitouri, Chairman of Environment Quality Authority, State of Palestine. Mr. Jamil, you have the floor now.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank the governments of Bangladesh and Ethiopia for hosting this meeting in a timely manner at this critical juncture where we all facing unprecedented climate change impacts as well as overwhelming COVID-19 challenges. It gives me great pleasure to participate in this ministerial segment of the dialogue that focuses on the impact of climate change on Africa and Middle East. The region which participated the minimum of climate change but suffering the most from climate change impacts among other regions of the world. Recently and more than ever, it became evident that no one is immune from the impact of climate change, neither developed nor developing countries. What we see every day and everywhere on this small planet are new records of high temperatures, heat waves, floods, wildfires, and drought all over the world with hundreds of casualties and loss of lives, in addition to damages in properties and infrastructures. My country, Palestine, is no exception, being highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change with severe implications for its economy, living standards, and environment. Climate change compounds the problem of shortage of water resources, food insecurity, and land degradation, and adaptation is the highest priority in our climate change agenda. To respond to climate change challenge, Palestine submitted its NDC targeting the highly vulnerable sectors, the estimated cost of $14 billion, mostly conditional to receiving appropriate support for means of implementation. Being under occupation, this undermines our control over our natural resources that is subject to systematic and widespread Israeli violations. Occupation has an impact on the delivery of our environmental policies and reduce our adaptive capacities. The state of Palestine's ability to adapt to climate impacts is crucial to achieve the sustainable development goals while implementing Palestine's NDC. Finally, I quote from United Nations Secretary General Wars in his statement in the opening of COP25 before the world leaders. There is no time and no reason to delay. We have the tools, we have the science, we have the resources. Let us show we also have the political will that people demand from us. To do anything less will be a betrayal of our entire human family and all the generations to come. Finally, I trust that this meeting and following activities of the forum from now to Glasgow will be an important step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Jamal Mituri, for excellent remarks. Next, Mr. Bozekri Razi, Honorable Director of Climate Change, Biodiversity and Green Economy, representing His Excellency Minister of Morocco. Mr. Razi, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Excellences, honorables participants, Mesdames et Messieurs, j'exprime tout d'abord donc le grand plaisir de participer avec vous au segment ministériel du dialogue régional du Forum sur la vulnérabilité climatique pour l'Afrique et le Moyen-Orient pour cette année 2021. Au moment où le monde subit l'impact d'une crise sanitaire exceptionnelle qui est due à l'aggravation de la pandémie du virus Covid-19 dans toutes les régions du monde, les changements climatiques et ses effets exacerbent les situations économiques, sociales et environnementales, malgré les efforts intensifs qui sont déployés à tous les niveaux pour réduire les répercussions donc, négatives de cette épidémie. Comme vous le savez déjà, donc, les dernières 5 années ont été les plus chaudes que le monde n'a jamais connues, ce qui devrait obliger la communauté internationale à redoubler d'efforts pour atteindre l'objectif convenu de maintenir ou de limiter l'augmentation de la température moyenne de la planète à moins de 2 degrés Celsius, voire même moins de 1,5 degrés Celsius d'ici la fin du siècle. Excellences, le Maroc est déterminé à faire face au changement climatique dans un contexte de relance verte post-Covid-19 en repensant l'ensemble de son modèle de développement et en redéfinissant les plans et programmes sectoriels, notamment en matière d'énergie propre, y compris l'hydrogène vert, en matière d'industrie, de santé, d'éducation, d'agriculture et de développement des territoires. Notre pays a ainsi soumis le mois dernier sa contribution déterminée au niveau national, actualisée avec un objectif de réduction des émissions de CO2 de 45,5% à l'horizon 2030, en accordant une grande importance à l'adaptation avec des actions estimées à plus de 40 milliards de dollars durant la période 2020-2030, qui couvre le renforcement de la résilience des secteurs les plus affectés, notamment les secteurs de l'eau, le secteur de l'agriculture, de la pêche, de l'aquaculture, le secteur de la foresterie et aussi donc le secteur de la santé. Mais aussi il y a les milieux et les écosystèmes les plus vulnérables, à l'instar des oasis du littoral et aussi donc de l'écosystème de montagne. Le Maroc a également élaboré une stratégie de développement bas carbone à long terme au titre de l'article 4.19 de l'accord de Paris. Et nous venons également d'achever l'élaboration de notre plan national d'adaptation. Mesdames et messieurs, Les pays de l'Afrique et du Moyen-Orient subissent des effets néfastes des changements climatiques qui sont accentués par les vulnérabilités particulières des systèmes de production agricole et alimentaire, dont la sauvegarde constitue désormais une priorité fondamentale dans les pays de cette région. Donc, une augmentation significative du soutien accordé aux subventions pour l'adaptation est primordiale et un appui aux projets d'adaptation et au fonds d'adaptation constitue donc un élément essentiel, non seulement pour financer des actions d'adaptation, mais aussi pour lutter contre l'insécurité alimentaire dans les pays en développement vulnérables aux effets du changement climatique et contribuer aussi ainsi à la réalisation des objectifs de développement durable. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, afin de consolider l'esprit de solidarité régionale, le Maroc est engagé à apporter son soutien aux initiatives africaines et aux initiatives de la région Afrique et Moyen-Orient, comme il a toujours d'ailleurs fait à travers les initiatives qu'il a lancées depuis la COP22 à Marrakech. Je cite l'initiative d'adaptation de l'agriculture africaine, l'initiative de la durabilité, la sécurité et la stabilité en Afrique menée conjointement par le Maroc et le Sénégal, et qui vise à prévenir les risques de catastrophes liés au changement climatique et renforcer aussi donc la résilience et améliorer les revenus des personnes concernées sur le continent. Il y a aussi l'initiative Water for Africa, l'initiative aussi qui a été lancée conjointement avec l'Éthiopie et qui vise à garantir que 100% des pays les moins avancés aient accès à l'énergie durable d'ici 2030. Mais en plus de ces initiatives, le Royaume du Maroc il soutient aussi et accompagne l'activation de 3 commissions climat qui ont été mises en place en marge de la COP22 en 2016 à l'initiative de Sa Majesté le roi Mohamed VI. Je cite la commission du bassin du Congo, la commission de la région du Sahel et la commission des États insulaires. Et pour la plupart, donc pour les 2 premières commissions, il y a déjà un plan d'investissement et avec aussi donc un coût, un budget qui a été identifié. Donc pour conclure, chères mesdames et messieurs, je voudrais remercier chaleureusement le Bangladesh et l'Éthiopie pour la co-organisation de ce dialogue et je réaffirme l'engagement du Maroc à soutenir les partenariats dans le cadre du CVF. Et merci pour votre attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bozekiri Razi, Director of Climate Change, Biodiversity and the Green Economy of Morocco, for your valuable comments. Now, I will give the floor to Mr. Alpha Jallow, UNFCCC Focal Point and Director of the Climate Change Secretariat, representing His Excellency Minister of Environment and Climate Change and Natural Resources of Gambia.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Moderator, Excellency. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. The Gambia also would like to join the former speakers in thanking Bangladesh and Ethiopia for hosting this CVF forum for Africa and the Middle East. As I said earlier on, my Honorable Minister is not well, so I'm stepping in to give this brief statement. As you are all aware, Gambia is also vulnerable and the vulnerability of the Gambia is increasing annually. This year is a particular example of natural disasters. For the first time since meteorological observations started in this country, we recorded a windstorm of about 85 to 86 kilometers per hour. And that is just a mini tornado for others. But for us here, we can call it a hurricane because it never happened. The destruction is fundamental and phenomenal. It's beyond our own imagination. 11 dead, more than 3,000 persons are affected, more than 1,400 households affected. The destruction of infrastructure, both public and private, is beyond our own imagination. Houses, fences, cars, schools, hospitals, we are all affected. That shows how increasingly vulnerable this country is becoming. In addition to that, I think it's not enough. We now have unpredicted rainfall season this year. We were expecting below to normal rainfall, but the beginning is a bit scatty, because up to now the western part of the country hasn't received enough rainfall to start agricultural activities. Inland the country, other farmers have started activities sowing groundnuts and other cereals, but there's not enough rainfall to continue that activities. Knowing that we are already at end of June, which is already 2 months into our rainy season, and 1 month into our 3 useful months of rainfall, is a bit for concern for this country. Nonetheless, we have our policies that we want to implement on climate change. Among them, first is the enabling environment that involves institutional arrangement that the country put in place. That is establishing the Ministry of Environment with the climate change portfolio in 2014. And that led to the country developing a climate change policy that has come with several recommendations. Among that is to establish a Directorate of Climate Change Secretariat and a climate change fund, and ensure that climate change adaptation is mainstream and integrated to the communal level across all sectors and all societies. And furthermore, the country is in order to achieve this objective, we had certain projects that are rural based. Among them is the ecosystem-based adaptation, and the second one is what we call in agronome local, is by UNCDF. These two, one of them is to allow cash transfer directly to the communities who will be involved in the work, and we call it JSP, Job, Skills, and Finance. This will allow the communities, one, to learn how to undertake the skills, and to be beneficiaries of the financial opportunities in doing those works. And the EBA is meant to restore forestation, ecosystem-based services through effective adaptation in the rural areas. The second one that is planned, or that is the third one, is what we call RICA, Rural Integrated Climate Change Adaptation and Resilience. This is from the Adaptation Fund, about $10 million. What we also had as a lesson learned from developing our policy is that it enables us to come with certain strategic documents. Among them is the SPCR, Strategic Program for Climate Resilience. Is an investment blueprint for the country, how climate investment can be channeled to this country. From the SPCR funded by World Bank, 1.5 million, we were able to come with 10 concept notes, with a climate finance portfolio of about $300 million. The second strategy is the low emission climate development strategy, which also paved the way on how we thought we can develop this country on a low growth economy, low green economy, in a low emission strategy that will sustain development, but still will reduce our emission. And it is also linked to our national NDP. Apart from that, furthermore, we had our climate change vision, which is 2050, and also it is linked to the LDC vision. And to strengthen the vision and the implementation of the vision, the country is now developing its long-term strategy with support from 2050 Pathway and other partners. The Gambia also would like to we like to share with all members that we have completed our NDC revision. We have revised our second NDC with only one target, 1 year target is 2030, and we have increased our ambitions from 2 ambitions of 2025 for 45 and 44 in 25 and 30 to only 1 single year and 1 target, and which is 49.7% of our total emissions. So these are some of the strategic documents with the policy that we had in place, and it is to help us implement our climate change policy, which we are also looking into revising from 2025 upwards. On lessons learned, Mr. Moderator, it is important that we all know that if you want to implement climate change policy successfully in your country and have an effective adaptation, you must have an institutional arrangement in place, and you must have a well-structured coordination that is cross-sectoral and cross-ministerial. And the country has done this from 2 to 3 years back. We have all these committees that will help us to have a cross-sectoral coordination. Among the committees, the first one is the High Council. We call it the Climate Change Council, which is chaired by the Office of the President or the Office of the Vice President. We have the Interministerial Climate Change Committee, which is involved, which include ministers and their permanent secretaries, to be followed by at the technical level, National Climate Change Committee, which is of technicians and experts across sectors. All of this is now been in the policy as recommended, and the numbers of each committee well defined by our national climate change policy. On lessons learned, it's also important to have international and regional cooperation. At the regional cooperation, we have the ECOWAS. We are working with ECOWAS on the ECOWAS Climate Change Commission of which Gambia is a member, chaired by Niger, and we are also working through ECOWAS on NDC implementation and NDC revision. We are also working on the ECOWAS on an MRV system that is supported by the government of Canada and coordinated by the Republic of Ivory Coast. We are also a member of the LDC front-runner countries for the Life AR. This shows you that as a lessons learned, you need international cooperation, regional and international, in order to implement our climate change agenda. We are also happy to share with all members that Gambia is also very much involved in the regional cooperation and the international one, excluding that of the UNFCCC process. On challenges, Mr. Moderator, as I said earlier on, we have strong challenges in moving forward our climate change agenda. Among them is the increases natural disasters that are happening in the country, coupled with the onslaught set ones. We have the coastal erosion and the sea level rise that is also affecting, resulting to destruction of agricultural land through salt intrusion and abandonment of some certain rice fields around the river due to high salt concentration and mangrove dieback. So these are some of the natural challenges that we are also having. The second most important challenge that we are also facing is the COVID-19 pandemic. It has restricted the flow of funding from outside of this country, and it has put a lot of pressure on our national budget. Much needed funds for climate resilience and adaptation is now being diverted into public issues, public health issues that we are all facing right now. Our ratio of debt to GDP is now 67.5%, but we expect this to increase with the pandemic affecting most of our sectors, especially the agricultural sector and the tourism sector because the tourism sector is a big contributor to our national GDP and a big contributor to servicing our debt. So I would like to stop my brief statement here, and I thank the moderator for your moderation and giving the Gambians opportunity to share our implementation challenges and successes with all members. And would like to apologize on behalf of my minister for failing to attend this important ministerial segment due to illnesses. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Alpha Jallo, for your remarks on behalf of presenting the Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Agriculture of Gambia. I will now like to give the floor to Ms. Janet Rogan, Regional Ambassador for the Middle East and Africa, COP 2016. Ms. Janet Rogan, the floor is yours. Ms. Janet, are you around? Ms. Janet Rogan, Regional Ambassador for the Middle East and Africa, COP 2016. Can you hear me, Janet? I think we have to move to the next speaker. I'm now pleased to pass the floor to the Honorable Minister of the Environment, Agriculture and Livestock of Burundi, His Excellency Dr. Deo Guide Rurema. Your Excellency, the floor is yours. Burundi. Can you hear me, please? Okay, if the two are not around, I think we now move to the observer countries. I think I will now pass the floor to the Honorable His Excellency Professor Fodai Jawad, Minister of Environment from Sierra Leone. The floor is yours. Your Excellency.
Good morning, everyone. Are you hearing me?
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Hope you are doing fine. Sorry, I just joined in. We're having some problems with the network. I read through the document and we've made some changes. I don't know whether you received them.
Please proceed. I think there is some connection problem. Can you hear me, Professor?
Yes, I'm having some connection problems, sorry.
Okay, now you can proceed.
As I was saying, yeah, my name is Professor Fodem Jawad, Minister of the Environment. This is my first time, and I want to reiterate the government commitments to environmental issues, and that led to the creation or the establishment of the new Ministry of the Environment, which I'm heading now. I went through the documents. My focal points were in the meeting. We made some changes that has been sent. I'm not sure whether you have received them, whether you've received the changes.
Yes, yes, we did.
Okay.
We received
the document looks good. Yeah, you received the changes to the document, correct? The track changes.
Yes, yes, we received it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now you can proceed.
No, I just wanted to say that we agree with the document to be adopted, and all of those changes we made. And if you have received the document, then I'm actually fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor. Now, I will pass the floor to Mr. Parfait Caudio, Director of the Cabinet of the Minister of the Environment of Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire, are you around? Maybe they are not connected. So now I'll move to I'll give the floor, pass the floor to Mr. John Helope, Principal Secretary, Ministry of Tourism and Environmental Affairs of Swatini. The floor is yours. Swatini. Mr. John Helope.
Hello, Chair. Hello, Chair.
Hello.
Yes, unfortunately, Mr. John Shope has been called on elsewhere, but Eswatini read the document and agree with it as it is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now we'll go to Mozambique. I think I will now pass the floor to Mr. Claudio Afonso, National Director of Climate Change from the Ministry of Land and Environment of Mozambique. Mr. Claudio Alfonso, the floor is yours. Mr. Claudio Alfonso. I think Mozambique is not around. Maybe we can move to the next one. I will now pass the floor to Mime Bilinga Kiovogu, focal point of gender and climate change at the Ministry of Environment, Water and Forests in Guinea. Mime Bilinga, the floor is yours.
Allô?
Hello, hello.
Vous me recevez?
Yes, yes.
Vous me recevez?
Yes, yes.
Okay, bon. Ok, bonjour tout le monde. Je voudrais vous dire que je suis là avec mon secrétaire général qui représente le ministre de l'Environnement, des Eaux et Forêts de la Guinée. Il est avec nous. J'aimerais que vous lui donniez la parole. Il est déjà connecté. Il est parmi nous. C'est M. Sidibari Sidibé, le secrétaire général du ministère de l'Environnement de la Guinée.
Bonjour.
Oui.
Bonjour.
Allô?
Yes, he's welcome.
Merci bien, merci.
Merci.
Et merci, Monsieur le Président. Et bonjour à tous les participants. C'est un véritable honneur pour la Guinée de prendre part en tant qu'observateur à cet important segment ministériel du dialogue régional Afrique et Moyen-Orient du Forum sur les vulnérabilités climatiques. Et notre participation exprime aussi notre parfaite volonté à quitter ce stade d'observateur pour être membre à part entière du partenariat sur la vulnérabilité climatique. Et à cet effet, je voudrais, au nom du gouvernement guinéen, remercier sincèrement l'ensemble des États membres ainsi que des institutions, notamment le Bangladesh et l'Éthiopie, pour avoir accepté à ce que la Guinée puisse prendre part à cet important segment ministériel. La Guinée est un pays qui fait partie des nations vulnérables et nous sommes confrontés à une double crise sans précédent du changement climatique aux côtés des chocs de la pandémie du Covid-19. Grâce à la plateforme CVF, nous pensons qu'une collaboration solide et efficace des pays les plus menacés par le climat peut être forgée à servir et promouvoir une action plus solide, équitable et réactive de la communauté internationale, ainsi qu'un soutien financier et technologique amélioré pour nos propres efforts nationaux pour surmonter les défis liés au changement climatique. Et il est évident qu'étant unis, la communauté internationale est capable de répondre à un défi global, celui du dérèglement climatique, et de s'engager sur la voie du développement durable. Le multilatéralisme, le droit international, les principes des Nations Unies sont les meilleures réponses face aux défis globaux que l'humanité affronte pour construire un monde plus juste et plus solidaire. La Guinée a apporté une réponse positive fondée sur la réalité scientifique du dérèglement climatique et qui prend en compte les responsabilités et les capacités de chaque pays. La Guinée, à l'instar des pays partis à la Convention cadre des Nations Unies sur les changements climatiques, a signé l'accord de Paris le 22 avril 2016 aux États-Unis et l'a ratifié aussi. Et cette ratification a permis au gouvernement guinéen de prendre part aux débats internationaux sur le climat afin d'apporter sa contribution aux efforts de réduction des gaz à effet de serre. Mesdames et messieurs les participants, l'Afrique, continent le moins responsable du dérèglement climatique, en paie le plus lourd tribut. Elle s'enfonce chaque jour qui passe dans un cercle vicieux de dégradation des ressources naturelles et fort malheureusement, la Guinée en fait partie en dépit du potentiel important des ressources hydriques, agricoles, forestières et minières. C'est pourquoi nous fondons un espoir certain sur le partenariat CVF et l'appui technique dans le cadre de la mise en œuvre de l'accord de Paris, lequel demeure l'un des piliers essentiels pour un développement neutre en carbone, résilient et durable en faveur de nos communautés. En outre, l'importance de créer une dynamique régionale pour relever les défis du changement climatique et maximiser les opportunités qu'il présente ne peut être aussi sous-estimée. Et encore une fois de plus, avant de terminer, je voudrais appeler à tous les États et institutions membres que dans les jours qui suivent, la Guinée compte être membre à part entière du partenariat CVF. Vive la coopération internationale et je vous remercie.
Thank you very much for your remarks. To close our statements from observers countries, I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Bob Natifu, Acting Commissioner, Climate Change Department in Uganda. The floor is yours, Mr. Bob Natifu.
Hello, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I can hear you. Continue.
Mozambique would like to ask for the floor.
Okay, okay. Okay, you can. Yeah, you can proceed. Mozambique.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable ministers, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Her Excellency Yvette Maibaz, Minister of Land and Environment of Republic of Mozambique, I would like to say thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this important meeting. Dear participants, Mozambique is a vulnerable country to extreme weather events of climate change due to its geographical situation combined with its socio-economical condition. That's why we would like to participate in member and not observer. For example, in the last 2 years, it was suffered from several droughts in the southern region of the countries. Gaza, Inhambane, and Maputo province, with negative impacts on communities, namely water scarcity and food insecurity. Mozambique suffered during this period several cyclones, highlighting Idai, Kenneth, Guambe, and Shalani, which provoked several damage and socioeconomic losses. For example, Cyclone Idai caused around 700 deaths in the province of Sofala, Manica, Tete, and Zambezia. The impact of COVID-19 is also serious, affecting the most vulnerable communities in our country. Due to the impact of climate change and COVID-19, there is a need for financial support to less developed countries. Mozambique is reviewing the targets, indicator, and budget of its national determined contribute, and is expected to be completed in November of this year. The country is preparing the second national communication on climate change and the National Adaptation Plan on climate change. Finally, I would like to inform that we are also preparing our participation in COP26, and we count on the involvement of the public and private sectors, civil society, and cooperation partners. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Claudio Afonso, for the very important remarks. I would like to pass the floor to Acting Commissioner, Climate Change Department in Uganda, Mr. Bob Natifu. The floor is yours, Mr. Bob Natifu. Can you hear me, please, Mr. Bob? So if Mr. Bob is not around, I think we better move to the next speaker. I will now continue with our partner section. I will now pass the floor to Mr. Gurbuzi Ganul, Director, Country Engagement and Partnership at IRENA. The floor is yours.
Participants, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen,
it's my pleasure to make a statement on behalf of IRENA to the ministerial segment in the Climate Vulnerable Forum, CVF, Africa and the Middle East Regional Dialogue. At the outset, I would like to thank the Presidency Bangladesh and the host of this regional dialogue, Ethiopia, for this invitation extended to IRENA. As we know, Africa and Middle East are the regions with rapidly expanding energy markets, and energy demand continues to rise on account of urbanization and industrialization. Aligned with the global agendas for sustainable development and climate action, countries are already going through a transition towards cleaner energy systems, and this is no different in Africa and the Middle East. Here, let me refer to IRENA's recently released flagship publication, The World Energy Transitions Outlook, which shows how the energy systems must change to align with the 1.5-degree climate objective through decarbonization, very much relying on renewable energy, renewable electrification, and energy efficiency solutions along with green hydrogen. I invite you to have a glimpse of the Outlook's technology, policy, and investment elements for a different energy future that are relevant to Africa and the Middle East. With significant renewable energy potential and rapidly decreasing renewable energy generation costs, Africa and the Middle East have a vast opportunity to avoid long-term lock-in with fossil fuel-based energy technologies. Sub-Saharan Africa faces considerable challenges in terms of energy access, and still over 500 million people in the region do not have reliable connectivity to electricity and access to clean cooking. Decentralized renewable energy solutions such as mini-grids, home systems are already providing energy to millions of people across the region and make universal access possible by 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been closely working with many CVF members, providing the tools, platforms, and knowledge that will help them realize renewable energy ambitions. Most recently, our focus has been the enhancement and implementation of the energy component of their nationally determined contributions. In this effort, we have engaged with 70 countries across the globe, including 24 Africa and Middle East countries, with 6 CVF member countries included. We welcome the strong commitment of CVF to achieve 100% renewables and the interest to collaborate with IRENA to achieve this target. Over the coming months, we hope to start working together with CVF to support integration of higher levels of renewable energy ambition in the climate prosperity plans at national level, which may then be reflected in the NDCs and long-term strategies. We will also be pleased to work with CVF on creating an energy compact for announcement at the upcoming UN high-level dialogue on energy in September to accelerate implementation of 100% renewable energy target of CVF countries. The compact could provide visibility to CVF efforts and can result in several partnerships which CVF and IRENA members should be able to leverage in achieving this ambition. We believe that today's regional dialogue and ministerial segment will further this energy transition ambition and enable CVF countries to strengthen international collaboration towards net zero emissions driven by renewables and enhanced climate action. I wish you all very fruitful discussions and look forward to a result-oriented cooperation between CVF and IRENA in support of CVF energy transition ambitions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gurbuz Gonul, Director of Country Engagement and Partnership at IRENA, for your excellent remarks. I will now pass the floor to Johan Chaudhary, Country Engagement Director, NDC Partnership. Mr. Johan, the floor is yours. NDC Partnership, can you hear me, please? I think they are not around. In that case, I will move to the next speaker. I will now pass the floor to Professor Walter Kalin, envoy of the chair of the platform on disaster displacement. Professor Walter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the chair of the platform on disaster displacement, the government of Fiji, let me thank you for the invitation to take the floor in my capacity as envoy of the chair of PDD. The platform on disaster displacement, PDD, is a state-led initiative focusing on the implementation of the Nansen Initiative Protection Agenda. We work towards better protection for people displaced in the context of disasters and climate change, as well as towards more effective prevention of climate-related displacement. We are proud to be a partner of the Climate Vulnerable Forum. We are pleased to engage with CVF countries, particularly today at the Africa and Middle East Regional Dialogue. We are happy to see Bangladesh, one of the founding members of the PDD, and with Madagascar, Morocco, and Senegal, several members of our steering group participating in this important event. We hope that our current engagement in the Horn of Africa and West Africa with activities to improve knowledge on climate change-related displacement, to share effective practices, and to develop effective policy responses will further deepen our partnership. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, you all know that the impacts of climate change, including displacement, are not future scenarios. Displacement in the context of climate change is already happening in all regions of the world, including your regions. According to the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, in 2020 alone, over 4.6 million new displacements due to disasters were recorded in Africa and the Middle East, many in the context of the extreme weather events exacerbated by climate change. The World Bank predicts that by 2050, more than 86 million people will move within their countries to escape the slow onset impacts of climate change in sub-Saharan Africa alone, if we don't take ambitious climate action. These challenges are huge. They can only be effectively addressed if we use all available policy tools to prevent and address climate-related displacement. First, we need to do more to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and associated hazards to mitigate the impacts of climate change in order to reduce displacement risks. Second, we need to expand our efforts to help people to stay where this is possible. And we need to help them to move out of harm's way where they wish to move. This means scaling up adaptation and disaster risk reduction measures and ensure that displacement risks and human mobility challenges are included in adaptation planning. And third, we need to strengthen our efforts to address the protection and assistance needs of persons, whether displaced within their countries or across borders, and to find durable solutions for them, helping to rebuild their lives, where climate change-related displacement cannot be avoided, where such displacement amounts to loss and damage. Ladies and gentlemen, ahead of COP26, it is timely to launch another joint call for robust and ambitious climate action. Addressing displacement in the context of climate change will require the incorporation of displacement risk assessments and preparedness into climate change adaptation planning and policies, as well as in the work of the Santiago Network on Loss and Damage. It also requires ambitious climate finance to catalyze action, to support countries and communities who are most vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change, cutting across mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage. And finally, it is crucial to systematically and forcefully integrate and mainstream displacement and migration considerations in all aspects of climate action. We stand ready to support you in your joint efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your remarks, Professor Walter Kelly. I will now give the floor to Mr. Kausigan Tovivo, Director, Africa Office, Climate Analytics. Mr. Kausigan Tovivo, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, participants, partners, and members of the CVF. It's a great honor for Climate Analytics to take part in the Climate Vulnerable Forum's 2021 Regional Dialogue for Africa and the Middle East. I'm the Director of the Climate Analytics Africa Office based in Lomé, Togo, in West Africa. First, I'd like to express my high appreciation to the People's Republic of Bangladesh for convening this high-level dialogue, and the Democratic Republic of Ethiopia for hosting it. And I would like to thank particularly every country, institution, and individual that has supported its organization. The work of the CVS is very important as it speaks to the issues and challenges that vulnerable countries face regarding climate change. The regional dialogue contributes indeed to enhance South-South cooperation on climate change work for vulnerable countries and advocate for sure for more sustainable, climate resilient, and low carbon development for our countries in the context of the 1.5 temperature goal. We can only call for long support to the work of the CVF. This dialogue comes at the right time following the London Ministerial and preparing the way for COP26, which must mark a turning point on our global effort to advance the Paris Agreement, especially finalizing the remaining agenda items, including the transparency framework, sustainable finance planning, and long-term adaptation, and tackling also loss and damage. As we all agree, adaptation work is crucial not only for non-vulnerable countries, but also to developed countries as well. For instance, the recent heavy flooding induced devastation in Germany and other Western European countries show the urgency of adaptation for all countries, and most urgently for the most vulnerable ones. It's then extremely important that the international community works to mobilize and make available sustainable, predictable, and sufficient finance and technical resources necessary to enhance adaptive capacity, strengthening resilience, and reduce vulnerability to climate change, as laid out under the various mechanisms of the Convention. We hope that adaptation will be given sufficient negotiation time at the upcoming COP26 in Glasgow to advance the global goal on adaptation established under the Paris Agreement, not only to serve the purpose of having a target to work toward, but also as part of a complete adaptation regime under the Paris Agreement, with the aim to ensure an adequate adaptation response in light of the inadequate mitigation action we have experienced so far. Climate Analytics, in its mission to synthesize climate science and make it available for countries to guide policy and action towards the 1.5 temperature goal and the resilient development, adheres to the objectives of the CVF and is currently supporting 12 least developed countries and small island developing states through technical assistance and capacity building for more ambitious upcoming national determined contributions, the national adaptation planning processes, and the mobilization of climate finance from various sources, including the GCF. Climate Analytics has developed, in the vein of supporting countries, numerous tools to assist countries, including, for instance, the 1.5 National Pathway Explorer, the Climate Impact Explorer, which shows the severity of climate change impact in different countries and different sectors, under various scenarios, including, for instance, coastal zones, various scenarios and sectors, including agriculture, coastal zones, energy, health, and so on. We express our firm willingness to support the work of the CVF to achieve sustainable and low carbon development for the vulnerable countries. And I thank you all for your attention and your engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks. I think to continue with our agenda, we'll now pass to the segment for the adoption and launch of the CVF Africa and the Middle East Regional Communique and the conclusion of the meeting. Dear Excellencies, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, the CVF Africa and the Middle East Regional Communique started on 27th of July. In these past 2 days, the meeting of the experts started the process of finalizing a CVF regional communique outlining regional perspectives on climate action to build momentum and awareness around the CVF agenda in the region and beyond, and the shared agreement on future climate change policy priorities. The dialogue built toward this global senior officials meeting of the CVF to be hosted by Bangladesh in October 2021, which itself will collectively review the findings of all the regional dialogues and finalize a Dhaka-Glasgow declaration of the CVF to be adopted as the CVF high-level meeting that will be held at UNFCCC COP26 at Glasgow in November 2021. In the past 2 days, we have been having permanent contact with the different delegations to successfully finalize the regional communique. I now present the regional communique for your valuable consideration. If there is no consideration regarding this text, I will be really glad to declare the regional communique adopted as one of the main outcomes of this important CVF Africa and the Middle East regional dialogue. I don't see any hand or any one interested to intervene. Then I thank you very much. As there are no comments, I hereby declare the CVF Africa and the Middle East regional communique adopted. We have to congratulate all of us for the amazing work that our delegations have done during these past hard-working days. Thank you very much for your support and your kind attention. I now have the honor to give the floor to the Special Envoy, Mr. Azad, for his closing remarks. Special Envoy Azad, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Congratulations for adopting this communique, which we will carry forward to COP26. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, we have reached the end of Africa and Middle East regional dialogue. I must say, I'm very happy with the discussion we had. So the very wide discussion covering all the natural disasters from flood, drought, cyclone, hurricane to all. So my sincere gratitude to all of you for joining us today through a virtual platform from across different time zones amidst these trying times. As you all are aware, the Climate Vulnerable Forum, Africa and Middle East Regional Dialogue, convened with the aim to identify and promote headline climate change policy priorities for vulnerable developing countries for the region ahead of critical multilateral global policy event in 2021. So Bangladesh and Ethiopia, both countries are facing climate change impacts like you. So we are here today together. In these 2 days, we have articulated key perspectives and priorities of the CVF members for the Africa and Middle East region, thus building towards a clear picture of shared interests across the forum globally. This dialogue has been an opportunity for CVF member and observer countries in this region to exchange on challenges, successes, and experience in climate change policy and formulate common policy priorities. Excellencies and distinguished participants, as the most vulnerable nations of the world, individually, we appear insignificant, and that separately, our emission may seem also negligible, but when we act together, we are greater. And we will continue with our leadership. All nations can and must contribute their fair share of global climate action. Taking inspiration from Bangladesh, which recently drafted the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, as a pioneer, we look forward to the leadership of climate vulnerable countries in developing and delivering their own climate prosperity plan. This we encourage to be in partnership with the multilateral partners with an aim to implement ambitious climate actions with national sustainable development strategies. In line with the vision of the Climate Prosperity Plan, the CVF presidency is also exploring interventions in the areas of 100% renewable energy via the creation of development of a support program to assist and support CVF member countries pushing ambitious aspirations regarding energy sustainability and resilience. Excellencies, as we head to Glasgow, we must not overlook the globally agreed upon target of developed countries delivering 100 billion per year by 2020. To address the needs of developing countries on which urgent climate action is needed, we must continue to speak in a united voice. It must be noted that CVF presidency is looking to place a demand for a joint delivery plan from the developed countries, developed nations, to demonstrate how the 100 billion target will be met over the next 5 years period from 2020 to 2024, $500 billion, with a specific target and financial forward-looking actions. Last but not the least, we cannot forget the global commitment to safeguard the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit of the Paris Agreement. The outcomes of this dialogue will build towards a global senior officials meeting of the CVF to be hosted by Bangladesh in October 2021, which itself will collectively review the findings of all the regional dialogues and finalize a Dhaka-Glasgow declaration of the CVF to be adopted by the CVF high-level meeting that will be held in UNFCCC COP26 at Glasgow in November 2021. I also believe that this dialogue will be successful in its sincere efforts to keep CVF regional member countries better informed about the organization's current activities, key presidency priorities, communications initiatives, and future plan. Before I conclude, I would like to thank Ethiopia for co-hosting this dialogue and all participants for their active participation. I would also like to invite all our esteemed observer states to join the CVF in our common global platform against climate change and its associated vulnerabilities. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Azad, Special Envoy. We have come to the end of the CVF Africa and the Middle East Regional Dialogue. We appreciate your kind support and the participation of your delegation in the past days. We now conclude the dialogue. Thank you very much, all of you who have attended this session. Have a good day. Thank you very much.